And as long as it goes well and we don't have any problems, we can probably keep meeting here. So hopefully this is a better venue for many of us that live on the west side. It's more central. We don't have to go through Kapaa traffic and all that. So we want to thank them as well as Karen, who came and helped set up early, and Nina, and she was a big part in helping Will to get here. And she will actually be introducing him. And David, her husband, who also helped a lot. My wife, Jamie, I want to thank her. She helped set up the sound and the piano. And let's see, Chris and Diana, they came early and helped. And some of us will be staying later and will help even clean up. So we thank you in advance for doing that, because this is a big project. We have to move all the tables back. We have to get all the tablecloths off and clean. We have to wash them. I'll take them home. And we have to be out of here by 9 o'clock. Because the security comes in here and shuts this place at 9 o'clock. So thank you for any of you that can help out. Lots of hands makes light work. Let's see, who else do I have? Noreen, thank you for judging the best dish. And she had to take a lot of different samples. Because there was a lot of food here tonight. This was the most food I think we've had at a vegetarian society that I've ever been to. And the most people. So thank you, Noreen. Oh, and while I'm on that topic, we do have a winner. And some people think, well, how could I win after there's so many people here? You just never know. And the one that won tonight, I don't know her name, but she brought in this loaf, and it was a quinoa loaf, and the ingredients are olive oil, mushrooms, salt and pepper, garbanzo beans, rolled oats, quinoa, peas, parsley, thyme, sun-dried tomatoes, and red onions. So if our dear sister that won that could come up, we have a little gift here. This is a gift card. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that nice dish and blessing us. We started implementing the $25 gift certificate from Papayas. And you can use it for anything. You can even give it as a gift. If you forgot somebody at the last minute to give them a Christmas gift, you could give them that. But the thing is, it's bringing more food. More people are more interested, and we're not spending $150 a month on food that we were buying from Papayas on trays. So it's helping us to get more food here and more people to participate. Let's see. Oh, Tracy and Robin back at the table. I had never met them before, but they came in early and they wanted to help. And those are great people to have in the Vegetarian Society. And they're watching the table. And there's free literature back there at the table, and magazines, all kind of stuff you can take. There's a donation box as well for the Vegetarian Society. How many did you actually count? Did you count them yet? 60 something. That's amazing. That's about what I thought. And I didn't even count. So that's amazing. Yeah, so thank you. And I think if it wouldn't have been a weeknight and this close to Christmas, we could have had 75 to 100 if it was on maybe a Sunday. So that's everyone I think that I need to thank, unless I may have forgotten a few people, but if I did, forgive me. But I do need, yes? Oh yeah, I'm gonna ask that. Yes, thank you for reminding me, because I'm trying to remember all my announcements. How many people have never been to the Vegetarian Society before? Wow, that's about 15 people. Praise God. How many people saw, and this is helping us as far as advertising it, how many people saw a flyer and that's why you came? Okay, we got a few. And we have certain people that have been helping put out flyers too, so we thank some folks in the South Shore. Bryce has been putting them out, as well as Troy. He's been putting them out in Kapaa. How many found out from the email address? Maybe got an email Okay, so we got some people there. How many people found out from Facebook? Okay. And how many found out from the radio or the newspaper? Wow. So see, everything is reaching different people. You know, some people, they don't do Facebook, but they listen to the radio, KKCR. So we're trying to use all the different methods we can and avenues to advertise this. And so it's good to know. Also, I want to share a couple last things with you about the membership. Our membership application. This is something that we're trying to build up again in Kauai. When I first started coordinating the Vegetarian Society, we had 12 members on the island. And we have 70,000 people here. And I said, that's not acceptable. Okay, so one of the ways we get more members is we have a discount program. And the discount program works if you have a VHS membership card. And you can go to several restaurants now, as well as health food stores. And you can save money by showing your card. And eventually you'll pay for your membership. And so that's an incentive for you to join the Vegetarian Society, which we're nonprofit, and we're basically supported by donations. And so if you would like to become a member, you can join online, and there's also these enrollment forms. Vim and Vigor is a health food store. Hanai also is offering discounts. The Shlivalak Indian restaurant, the Raw Living Foods is offering a discount. And there's many more. If you get on the dining guide and look under Kauai, you'll see about 10 places. And I'm still trying to get more. You know, so it's going to, hopefully we're going to get more restaurants all over the island. And they have to have at least 3 vegetarian dishes. So I guess the last thing I should mention before I introduce Nina, a couple more things. We have Will Tuttle, and since he's here this week, we wanted to take advantage of him being here. And we have him speaking in Princeville on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. at the community center. And there's some people that aren't going to come to this that will be there. And some of you may want to hear him again. And I don't know if his talk is exactly the same, but it's always good to hear it twice, even if it is. So if you want to come to Princeville at the community center at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. There we're doing a simpler menu because we don't have as much time. And it's just dessert. So you can win a $25 gift certificate for the best dessert. So I encourage you to come if you want to, bring a dessert. Then we have one last thing is as far as the Vegetarian Society, and that is next month. We are scheduled not for the first Sunday. We're trying to get back to the first Sunday of the month, okay? But the last 2 months we've been doing holiday things, for Thanksgiving, pre-Thanksgiving one, and this is a pre-Hanukkah, pre-Christmas gathering. But we cannot meet the first Sunday of the month here because it is January 1st. And they do not want us to meet here on January 1st. So we have to be a little flexible if we can use the place. We're actually meeting January 8th. And that's a few more weeks, it's kind of close if we met January 1st to this meeting anyway. So we're meeting January 8th, and we have a special cooking demonstration with Catherine King, which she is over in the far corner, hiding. And the title of her talk is Going Green with Catherine King. And we feel that we can get more people if we meet at about 4:30 on Sundays. And normally it would be the first Sunday of the month, but it will be the second Sunday in January. And you'll be getting emails and, put flyers up and all this. But there is some flyers back there that I've already printed off. Those I would prefer for people that don't have internet, because you will be getting the email. But this is what's happening on January 8th at 4:30 right here. And so it'll be a special cooking demonstration, and she has a really amazing gift. And she specializes in Puerto Rican, Thai, and Hawaiian fusion. So it's really going to be interesting what she makes. And I've never tasted anything that she made that I didn't just love. So I encourage you to come to that, and that will be on January 8th. There's also artwork that you might notice up here. Madeline is an artist, and so this is some of her beautiful artwork, and she'll have it back there as well for sale. And they'll be talking more about that as well. There's a little book table. They have audiobooks as well as books. And so feel free to go back there after the meeting and talk to them and pick up some of their books. The last thing has to do with a dine out. And I just want to see if many of us here would like to spend more time with Will Tuttle. I know it's just before Christmas, and for some people it's family time and all this kind of thing. But Will is willing to do a dine out. And we have not had a dine out here, I know, for a long time. I've never been part of one. We do them in Oahu all the time with the guest speakers. I already have a lady that's willing to cater it from Raw Living Foods in Kapaa, Janet. And if any of you would like to go to the dine out, it's going to be, and Will talk more about it, what he's going to do there. But it's more for those that want to be more activists in vegetarianism. And we'd like to do that Friday night, So basically, the only thing we need to know is how many people would be interested in going to a dine out with Will and where we could do it. And this might be a possible venue on Friday night. I talked to Amarosa, but I'm not sure. But we will post it on Will's website, and we will actually send out emails so people will be informed. But if you'd like to do that, talk to us afterwards. Will's going to talk more about it. I don't want to spend any more time making announcements, but I want to invite Nina up here. And Nina and I have done a talk together, and she was actually supposed to do this talk, but Will has taken her place. And she was relieved, and she's blessed, because she was so excited. I'll let her introduce Will and tell you kind of how this happened, and then Will will speak, and then we'll have time for questions afterwards. Okay, and he'll announce that as well.
Thank you, Thomas. Aloha, my name is Nina Monasevich, and I'm so delighted to be able to introduce Will Tuttle. But before I give an introduction, I just do want to give a little backstory. I was scheduled to do this talk, and it was going to try to be based on Will's brilliant, enlightening, empowering vision of how we can solve all the world's problems, in my opinion. And I was working on my speech, and about 5 days later, I got an email from Will, who I've been in contact with for 9 years. I've been trying to get him here for 9 years. After I heard his lecture on New Dimensions, I contacted him and said, oh my God, you have the answer to all the world's problems. We need you to come to Kauai. And I contacted the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, who did bring him to Oahu and Maui, but they didn't have a budget to bring him to Kauai. And this was twice in the last 9 years. And I was very disappointed because I didn't have the energy or the means to do it myself. So I'm just deeply grateful to Thomas and Janie and the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii for making this happen. This is a dream come true for me. So, and by the grace of God, you're getting to hear Will instead of me. Talk for an hour, I wouldn't be able to do it. So, Dr. Will Tuttle is an acclaimed musician, composer, author, and an educator. He has lectured and performed widely throughout North America, Europe, and the world. He has been a peace activist and a vegan for over 30 years. He is the author of an international bestseller, The World Peace Diet, published in 16 languages. Dr. Tuttle is a featured expert in cowspiracy and other documentary films. He holds a doctorate degree from UC Berkeley, focused on educating, intuition, and altruism. His writings, music, and presentations focus on compassion, creativity, intuition, and the interconnectedness of social justice, animal liberation, and environmental, health, and spiritual and peace issues. He has taught college courses in creativity, comparative religion, and philosophy. He is a recipient of the prestigious Courage of Conscience Award and the Empty Cages Award. He is a former Zen monk and a Dharma master in the Zen tradition. He is co-founder of the Worldwide Prayer Circle for Animals. Please welcome Dr. Will Tuttle. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nina. And wow, it's beautiful to be here on Kauai. Can you all hear me okay? Thank you all so much for helping to make this possible. Let's give a big round of applause also to Tom and just everyone. I know there was a lot of people that helped contribute. So thank you all so much, really. This is how things happen. It's through cooperation and through giving and working together to help. In this way, I think grassroots activism is really the future of our society. So I'll get started here. This lecture is going to be based somewhat on the writings that are in this book, The World Peace Diet, that Nina just mentioned. Just so I have a feeling of who I'm talking to, how many of you have actually already read The World Peace Diet? So I have a sense, so just 1 or 2, 3, 4, just a few of you. Great, okay, so most of you have not. That's good. And then just to mention, we were on the Big Island and also on Maui. Before that, we just actually, we've been on the road. We've been gone actually now for about 2 months doing a lecture tour to China. We went in, I think it was 22 lectures in, 12 cities and 14 days in mainland China. The World Peace Diet has been translated into simplified Chinese and also to traditional Chinese. So we went also to Taiwan and Vietnam and it's in Vietnamese also in Singapore. And it's just been wonderful, actually. It's been very inspiring to see how in China and in Taiwan, actually all of these countries, the vegan message is really growing very quickly. Just a profusion of new vegan restaurants, meetup groups, apps and blogs and communities. And maybe if I have time, I'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later. But anyway, so unfortunately, we don't have any World Peace Diet books on the table physically. However, if you'd like to buy a copy, just give us your name and we will send a box to Thomas and then he can distribute them. So I'll be and I can sign them to your name if you'd like. But we do have some of these. This is the other book that I'm not the author of, I'm the editor of. This book just came out. The World Peace Diet was just released in the 10th anniversary edition, so it's been out now just about exactly 10 years. This book just came out last year. It's called Circles of Compassion, Essays Connecting Issues of Justice. I chose 29 other authors who are all actually all vegans, and just to focus on what is referred to as intersectionality, which is the discipline of connecting the various forms of social justice issues like racism and sexism and ableism and heterosexism and human trafficking and the various kinds of problems and issues, social justice and human rights issues that we have, and connecting all that also with speciesism or with our abuse of animals. And so it's kind of pretty exciting. So if you'd like to dive into that particular subject in depth with very highly regarded authors on that subject, we do have that book here. But in many ways, though, the ideas in that book, the Circles of Compassion book, are really in the World Peace Diet in many ways. So I'm going to be focusing primarily on that. And then I'd like to speak for a while, maybe play a little music since we have this piano. I'm grateful for that. And then maybe open it up for a few questions. So I'd like to go ahead and jump right in and talk about the reason I wrote the World Peace Diet. Essentially was to try to help us as human beings understand why we have the problems that we're having and why we seem to be so ineffective in actually addressing them and competently. And so the basic idea is that we're all born into a society where from the time we're little infants, we're compelled, without our permission, by very well-meaning people like our parents and teachers and ministers and doctors and all the institutions in our society to participate in meals that are not in our best interest, meals that are basically comprised of animal-based foods like meat, dairy products, and eggs. And so we're not only eating foods, animal-based foods that are harmful for us physically in a variety of ways, as we are beginning to realize, I think, more and more clearly, but also they're harmful to us on the internal level. And the World Peace Diet focuses on the big picture, in a sense, of our whole fundamental abuse of animals and animal agriculture, how it affects really the 5 levels of health, what I refer to as the 5 levels of health, 5 dimensions of health. When we think of health, we usually think of physical health, number one, but there's also, of course, very important is our psychological health, and that also important is our spiritual/ethical health, and those are sort of more internal, those two. And then also, it's very important for us to live in a healthy society, so cultural health or social health is the 4th one, and then the 5thly, of course, all of these depend on a healthy earth, so environmental or ecological health. And so I think we're raised in a society where we're essentially disconnected from an underlying truth, and it's really a glaringly obvious truth once we begin to see it, that animal agriculture is devastating to all 5 dimensions of health, and yet it's falsely portrayed as some kind of healthy, benevolent thing, eating hamburgers, hot dogs, fish sticks, cheese, whatever it is. And so it's really about community. Underlying teaching here is really, it's about community. The basic thing, when we leave here, we go out into the world and we see people going into restaurants and going into stores and taking out their wallets, and this is it. This is the voting booth right here. These votes do get counted, guaranteed. I don't know about the other votes anymore. I've kind of given up on those, but these votes do get counted. And so the idea is when we're voting with our dollars, we're sending a message into the system that will guarantee that that it will take place. Whatever we purchase will be replaced, and there'll be more of that. So the idea is that when we see people going out, when we leave here and see people going out and buying, voting for meat, dairy products, and eggs, there's really only one reason anyone actually does that, and that is because we're following orders. We're basically doing what we've been taught to do from the time we're little infants, and we're following orders. And it's very difficult, actually, in our society to question those orders because they're injected into us very early on, by, as I said earlier, by people we trust implicitly. And most people are following the same orders, and so the other way to look at it is we do it because we're products of our communities. And so I think the hope for our future, the hope for humanity and the hope for animals and the hope for all life on Earth, really, because we really live in critical times, is that we can somehow create communities that are questioning the official stories in our society that are leading to devastation to animals and wildlife and hungry people and to ourselves and future generations and ecosystems, that we can create communities that exemplify a more holistic and interconnected and sane and loving and kind and respectful way of living. And I'm delighted that right here, I feel that essentially that right here, right now, we have such a community. The gathering together for a few hours is sort of a temporary community, and we're just here for a couple of hours, but it's a community that's based on the deep values of ahimsa, as the ancient Sanskrit word. It means nonviolence. And I think the word vegan or veganism is another iteration of this ancient teaching of nonviolence, which is essentially that we'll never have happiness for ourselves as long as we harm others for our own benefit. As long as we say, "Oh, I'm going to abuse you, steal from you, kill you, abuse you, harm you for my own benefit." And so animals have been and are continuing to be horrifically abused, as well as other human beings, as well as ourselves, by animal agriculture. And it's difficult for us to question it because of the communities that we're raised in that are constantly promoting it through the media and through social institutions. However, as we can create alternative communities, it opens up the doorway for us to sample this delicious food, have other conversations where we talk about actually what we're not supposed to talk about. Right now, we're in many ways breaking the big taboo, against talking about who we're eating, and it is a who and not a what. And once we begin to do that, I think each one of us begins to be a force for healing. So the World Peace Diet approach to vegan living and to social transformation is based essentially on the idea that all of us, whether we're vegans or pre-vegans or wherever we are on the whole spectrum, we've all been wounded by being born into a society based on horrific and routine and relentless abuse of other living beings, and where this is just considered completely normal and natural. That we're all wounded by that, and we're all in a process of healing, And as we are able to heal from these wounds, we can awaken, and we can not only awaken, we can help others to awaken. So to me, what we're talking about is the most wonderful adventure, actually, that we can go on today in our world, an adventure where we can co-create and help actually visualize and build a world where peace and freedom and justice and equality and sustainability are actually possible. So the basic message here, from my point of view, is very good news. You know, I think there's absolutely no reason why we human beings cannot live in harmony and joy and abundance and health on this beautiful earth. How many of you have noticed somewhere along the way that the earth is beautiful? Anyone? I mean, you live in Kauai, you better put your both hands up. Right, so the earth is beautiful. It's so beautiful. I think just that understanding itself should awaken within us a yearning to protect the ecosystems and to teach our children to also protect ecosystems and to protect wildlife and to protect animals and protect the systems that we have in place to ensure that things are protected. But also, besides being beautiful, the earth is abundant, enormously abundant. And yet we're always told this lie that there's not enough, right? There's not enough food to go around. And so we have to understand there's plenty of food to go around. Right? Every year, we're growing enough food to feed everyone, easily. I mean, no one ever argues this point. This point is never argued. You can't argue. I mean, we're growing enough food. Conservative estimates say, 8 billion people, and some others say maybe 9 or 10 or 11 billion. But we have 7.5 billion people. We could easily feed everyone. The problem is we're feeding most of the grains that we're growing, and actually a lot of the fish that we're catching and growing to animals. And then this is extremely wasteful, and so we have about 1 billion people who are chronically hungry and starving. And that is well understood, essentially, to be the driving force behind conflict. When you have food shortages, when you have injustice, you're going to have conflict, war, refugees, all these problems that we're faced with. And yet, animal agriculture is the driving force behind this kind of illusion of lack. So the good news is this earth is not only beautiful but abundant. We can easily feed everyone, actually, on a fraction of the land. Visualizing all human beings eating totally plant-based diets is really seeing a world where we can allow habitat to come back and wildlife to come back again. They're being forced into extinction right now, unfortunately, at a very alarming rate. Allow the oceans to heal, rivers to heal, and really our societies to heal, our bodies to heal, our minds to heal. Everything can heal from this. However, animal agriculture is the utter complete opposite of healing. It's about inflicting trauma on other beings and eating that trauma and feeding it to our children, and it's ugly and devastating on every level. That's it. I mean, it is. We lived in an RV for 17 years, traveling around North America, and we've traveled the world at this point. And we just got back from Africa not too long ago, in the Middle East, and we've been in Europe and Australia and all over the place. And essentially, animal agriculture, wherever you go, you see hideous devastation. So the key, I think, though, in all of this is to understand that whatever we're doing to the outer world in a more fundamental way, we're also doing to the inner landscape of our consciousness. And so the basic idea is that when we create communities of sanity and healing, which is, I think, what we're doing here today, then we can begin to create the foundation for this new world. And the underlying, I think, in a sense, the most important aspect of this is to see, first of all, the outer violence, and then to see the inner violence. So by the outer violence, I'm talking about environmental, cultural, and then our physical health. So the environmental I've already mentioned just briefly. I'll say a little bit more. Rainforests right now are being cut down at about 1 acre per second. The driving force behind that is people taking out our wallets, paying for meat, dairy products, and eggs. And so that is causing the rainforest to be cut down to grow soybeans. And these soybeans are fed to cows and pigs and chickens, and factory farm fishes eat huge amounts of soybeans also. And just being in, not only being in China, but being in Europe and being in the United States, we all import beef and soy, especially beef from the Amazon. So this is devastating, and also the fact that the oceans are being overfished to the point where oceanographers and people who study this are saying that our oceans are really teetering on the brink of major collapse. And within 20 years, we may not even have most of the major fish species that we have. My own ancestors came over on the Mayflower back in 1620 and then on the Planter in 1640. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts area. And they wrote in their journals how when people came across in their boats, they thought their ships were going to run aground on these schools of fish that were so dense they thought they can't even get through. The abundance of the earth is enormous, but we human beings are attacking. In fact, I just read the other day, it's kind of amazing when you think about it, that scientists have been trying to figure out how many fish we're killing every year, right, for food. And for years, we measure the number of land animals we kill. There's numbers, estimates in the billions, 9 billion, in the United States roughly, and 60, 80 billion, whatever it is worldwide. But the number of fish, it's always just been in tonnage, the weight, because they're not. So, but scientists have tried to, put numbers on it, and they've come up with numbers somewhere in the 2 to 6 trillion fish per year is how many we're killing. And the reason the number is so high, actually, is because we're not just catching fish to eat ourselves directly. Scientists discovered a long time ago that it's profitable, actually, for agribusiness like dairy operations and meat operations and egg operations to enrich the feed of cows and pigs and chickens with fish meal. So, over half, actually, of the fish that are caught are fed to these animals. In fact, cows are eating more fish than human beings are in the United States. I don't know if you've seen cows jumping into streams trying to catch fish, but they do it because it boosts milk production and it boosts meat production. And so, if I'm eating cheese, I'm actually eating fish. And so, but this whole thing is so devastating. So anyway, so as I was saying, it's 2 to 6 trillion animals. And so then they try to figure out, well, how many is that actually? I mean, what is 2 to 6 trillion animals? And so the estimate when they put, is that if you put that many fish, just end to end, basically, it would reach from the earth all the way to the sun. That's how many we're killing every year. For what? It's completely unnecessary. I haven't had fish in, 40 years. Over 40 years. I haven't been to a doctor in over 40 years either. We don't, I mean, this to me, this is a testament to not only the rapacity of human beings and the short-sightedness of human beings, because these oceans cannot recover if we keep doing this, but also a testament to the amazing abundance of the ecosystems here. They can actually create fish that will reach all the way to the sun every year. But please, why are we doing this? I mean, we're making money on it, right? I mean, the fish industry makes money, the doctors, the pharmaceutical industry, they're making money. But, money, I mean, our children will not have a future. So, to understand that, and then to understand, I think, also the history of this, I think is very important. And the basic idea, when we look at this, because we look at all this, we see, okay, it's not rational for us as human beings to be eating animal foods anymore. We can see it's devastating to our ecosystems, that if everyone moved to a plant-based diet, scientists are saying it's around anywhere between 8 to 1 to 15 to 1 to maybe 30 to 1. In other words, in terms of water use, it's about 30 to 1 according to the United Nations. In other words, 30 people eating a plant-based diet uses as much fresh water as one person eating a standard Western diet. So this is really good news, because if we move to a plant-based diet, we can really save water. With land, it's maybe 12 to 1. With petroleum, it's maybe 8 to 1. So we can massively reduce our environmental footprint by moving to a plant-based diet. In fact, when I was in China, it was so interesting, because going to China and lecturing on this topic for me, was so inspiring, because not only were they enormously interested, and I had hundreds of people. We had up to send, a lot of times 500, 600, 700 people at every lecture I was giving, and they were constantly interrupting everything I said with applause. I mean, they were really into this, and I realized that veganism is basically rooted in China. I mean, it came out of China. That's where it started, hundreds of years ago in the Zen monasteries and Buddhist temples. And so in China, it's interesting, because there's this sort of deep cultural remembrance that this is how we live if we want to wake up and live a life of harmony with each other and nature. But also science, like I'm saying, and rationality is telling us we better move to a plant-based way of living if we want to have a world for our children. But also the government, the Chinese government has recently, I mean, it was not that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I guess, came out with an official policy statement mandating that Chinese people and China in general reduce meat and dairy consumption, and their goal is to reduce it by 50%. And I remember when I said that, I said, gosh, it's so great, that your government is wise enough to mandate that we reduce meat and dairy consumption. And then I would say, I wish the US government was as wise as the Chinese government. Oh, they really clapped when I said that. And I kind of wish they were too. I mean, why is our government not doing that? Why is our government giving huge subsidies to the meat and dairy industries, which is destroying everything, destroying our possibilities for a future here? But, I explained the whole thing in the World Peace Diet. I mean, the meat dairy, the ranching industry essentially has been running things for thousands of years. And so maybe I'll talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important to understand. So in the World Peace Diet, there's a chapter, it's the second chapter, that goes into the history of all this. And very briefly, I just want to do this quickly. The basic idea is that if we go back historically, and we look at, well, so what happened? Why are we hurting animals? Why do we imprisoning animals and stabbing them and killing? It's kind of like this canned hunt operation that, is really extreme. And we're doing it because 10,000 years ago in what is today Iraq, for the very first time, people started to own as property wild sheep and then wild goats, and about 2,000 years later, wild cows. It's called herding, right? It was the herding revolution. And so the basic thing I think to understand is that this revolution was the last revolution our society ever experienced. And we really have not had any revolutions since then, I don't think, because nothing really changed. I mean, the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, the communication revolution, whatever they are, we can stab and kill more animals faster than ever. Nothing has changed. We're still destroying everything here faster than ever. So the herding revolution back then, that really changed things. And it was a long revolution. It took actually thousands of years, many, many generations. But what happened, about maybe 6 or 7 main things happened. Number one, animals were reduced from being mysterious and powerful and respected cohabitants of the earth with us to being mere property. So their status was reduced, and they were owned, and they were impregnated against their will, and their babies were stolen, and they were stabbed and mutilated and everything else. And when we do that to other living beings, we have to reduce their status and say they're way below us. They're so inferior to us. They don't matter. We would not want another species to see us that way, but that's what we've done to them. And then the other animals also lost their status, because once we started owning animals, they were actually wealth. And so the other animals, like the wolves and coyotes and bobcats and prairie dogs and pretty much all the other animals, became pests. It's something we have to sort of manage and get rid of them because they might interfere with our property. And so our whole orientation toward the natural world shifted when we started owning beings as slaves, as things to be used. And then that led to something very interesting, which is it led gradually to the arising for the very first time on planet Earth of a wealthy elite class. I used to teach college courses on the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Iliad, the Odyssey, the ancient Old Testament writings, and all this, ancient Greek tragedies, all this stuff. If you've read any of those, you know that, and when you read it, it talks about the kings, right? There's these kings in place, right? And they're running everything. They're very wealthy. They're powerful. Well, why are they so wealthy and powerful? There's only one reason. They own livestock. They're the ranchers. They run things. They are in charge. And so they control basically the politics and the economies, and they invented 2 institutions that had never been on planet Earth ever. First one comes from the ancient word where we get our word cow, go, gavia. It's the word for war. It literally means the desire for more cows. There had never been war on planet Earth, but it was invented as a way to increase wealth for the wealthy elite. Does that sound familiar? When the wealthy elite wants to get richer, what do? They go to war. And so a king would he would have this big, huge pile of wealth. I mean, not a pile, but a herd of wealth. And he would see another king that had a lot of goats and sheep and cows, and so he would go try to take them. And of course, they wouldn't give up without a fight, so we had these mass, gigantic wars. Whoever lost the war, not only did the animals become the property of the victors, but, you guessed it, you know what I'm going to say? The people. They also became the property of the victors. So animal agriculture led directly not only to the reduction of the status of animals and wildlife, but also to the rising of a wealthy elite, also to war and to slavery, and then also to capitalism as a means of exploitation. In the sense, I mean, capita is the old Latin word that means head, right? Head of sheep and goats and cows, right? So you know, these were the proto-capitalists that had the head. This was the wealth that they could increase by impregnating animals very quickly, as fast as you can. And the very first science, actually, was that the systematic attempt to scientifically, you know, systematically dominate female animals and manipulate them so they would have offspring that would have more wool and more milk and more meat and so forth. And so that, and then two other things. One was the domination, unfortunately, of women. Women also, prior to this, it's well understood, were highly respected. They did something men could never do, which is to bring forth new life. But with animal agriculture, this whole system, you know, animal agriculture is really about dominating female animals, especially sexually abusing female animals, and impregnating them against their will. So men were seeing more and more, learning to see females as mere breeders that are here for my pleasure, that are here to give me sons, you know, give me, if it's an animal, to give me wealth, and if it's a woman, to give me also wealth and sons. And so a very, you know, patriarchy arose because of animal agriculture and the domination of the feminine. And then, of course, going right along with that was the role model for boys now gradually became the role model of a brutal, hard, tough, disconnected male capable of violence against animals, against women, against rival herders. And so these very violent, warlike, patriarchal societies that arose in the Eastern Mediterranean region, it's well understood, they spread throughout the northern Mediterranean, into Asia, Central Asia, Asia, into Europe, and they didn't stop there. They came to the Americas, to Africa, you know, spread worldwide. And quite honestly, we're born into that exact same culture. It's still the same culture. We're killing and herding, you know, it's just industrialized now. It's totally industrialized. We live in a herding society. We have to understand that. People don't think, well, I live in a herding. No, not. People think a herding society is where people are walking around, you know, with animals. We live in a herding society. It's just industrialized, and it's hidden away in these gigantic stinking sheds where there's thousands of animals, or tens of thousands sometimes of animals stuck away, but their bodies are everywhere, and the whole mentality of herding, of violence and domination of animals and the sacred feminine and of earth, which is characteristic of herding cultures, is being played out on a massive scale that's utterly devastating on every level. And so that culture is still spreading. I mean, we just got back from Africa. I mean, you can see it very clearly. You can see it everywhere. There's Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, McDonald's, Monsanto, Cargill, the IMF, the World Bank, the large financial institutions, the governmental institutions, USAID, Heifer Project, all these things. What are they doing? I call it the military, industrial, meat, medical, pharmaceutical, media, banking complex. So we have this complex, and it works very well, essentially, to suck most of the wealth from every nook and cranny of the world and society and put it into the hands of a tiny elite of less than 1% of the people. And it's through animal agriculture that it operates. It's through people eating animal foods and getting sick and destroying ecosystems, going to war, and the pharmaceutical, medical, food, chemical, that whole thing. It's rooted in animal agriculture. And seeing it in Africa, just seeing the tragic loss of habitat for wildlife, for elephants, for lions, for giraffes and zebras and all these animals, because now people want, they want to eat burgers. They're starting to make these big Monsanto monocrop fields for animal foods. That's what destroys nature more than anything, is animal agriculture. And so all these species now are slipping into extinction. So the only hope for our future, there's one hope for our future. I mean, really, we can see it very clearly. There's a beckoning doorway where we do have a future, and it's a vegan future if we're going to have a future. If we continue on the path of animal agriculture, we will go extinct, for sure, and we won't even know why it happened. Because what animal agriculture does not only is destroy everything about the environment and our society and also our physical health, but more insidiously, it actually attacks our intelligence and our empathy and our sensitivity and our wisdom. It dumbs us down so much, unfortunately, that we're powerless to change course. We just become automatons, robotically destroying everything because we can't, it shuts down our capacity to make connections. So the good news is that we're seeing, I think, more and more an awakening happening. The resistance is enormous. It's very understandable why this resistance is so strong. And I talk about this in the World Peace Diet, that it's not about blaming anyone. It's not about criticizing anyone. I'm not criticizing anyone. It's just understanding that 10,000 years ago, people started to do this. Anthropologists, have all these different theories why. We don't know why, but for some reason it started happening. People started hurting animals. And it created a system of such utter violence and abuse of animals and of humans, and war and slavery and a wealthy elite and all that, all of us are just born into it. And our parents were born into it, and their parents were. So we just get programmed, we get indoctrinated into it, and it's very hard to break out of it. It's kind of like, if you think about it, for thousands of years, before all this, way back when, go back, 50,000 years, whatever, people lived in little tribes, right, in little groups. And we all ate the same thing, whatever it was, wherever we happened to be, we all ate together. And if someone were to say, I'm not going to eat your food anymore, that would be like, that's completely unthinkable. That's like saying, I'm not one of you. The group would say, okay, then go off and die, the heck with you, So today, that kind of still lives within us, I think. There's this sort of tribal identity. So if a vegan walks into the room, it's sort of like, uh-oh, they're not part of our tribe, And we're really afraid, in a sense, to be different, to actually question this food. And yet, we can see that it's utterly irrational to be eating animal foods. It's so wasteful of resources. It's so unhealthy. I mean, what do animals do? They convert what is essentially really healthy nutrients, could be plant-based nutrients, plant-based carbohydrates and vitamins and minerals and starch and fiber and proteins and fatty acids. I mean, these are really healthy ingredients. And they basically convert it to 4 primary things: saturated fat, cholesterol, animal protein that is acidifying and inflammatory, and then huge amounts of sewage, and also nitrous oxide and methane, which are devastating to climate stability. And so it's like, it makes no sense for us to continue on. Why do we continue on just on a path of utter destruction where we see our hospitals being filled up by the diseases that come from this, right? I mean, have you seen the book? It's well understood, but Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die, where he's an MD, and he basically has done really intense, in-depth research into the 16 main reasons that people die, the reasons that are filling up our hospitals. And out of those 16, 15 of them are directly caused by eating diets that are high in animal-based foods. Diabetes, osteoporosis, liver disease, kidney disease, autoimmune diseases, various forms of cancer, and all these things. High blood pressure and strokes and all that stuff. So basically, we can see rationally that there's no reason to be continuing on this path, and yet we just keep doing it. And that's what the World Peace Diet, I think, one of the reasons I wrote the World Peace Diet was to go deeply, if possible, into how it affects the landscape of our consciousness. And so the basic idea is that when we're sitting at a table, from the time we're little infants and we're eating food, we're not just eating foods that are going to harm us physically, we're eating foods that are going to harm us psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, even more than they harm us physically, unfortunately. And we really have to understand this. And I was raised in this myself. Maybe I'll talk about that later. But the basic idea is that there's probably, there's about 7 main mentalities or attitudes that are essentially injected into us along with the food by eating these meals. I'll just talk about 3 of them, just to keep it quick. One of them, a very obvious one, is disconnectedness. In other words, every meal, when we're sitting there eating animal-based foods, we're learning at a very deep level. It's being programmed into us at a very deep, preconscious, nonverbal level to not make connections, right? Don't make the connection between what's on our plates and what it took to get it onto our plates. It's just bacon. It's ham. What, we don't think, well, it's a female animal, a pig who, I wonder what she was like. No one would ever ask that question. We don't look and see, what is this actually? We just learn. Every meal is teaching us from the time we're little infants to stay shallow, to numb ourselves to what we're actually doing, to just look, to not look deeply or listen deeply or feel deeply or care deeply, to just stay shallow and follow orders and just eat it and don't think about it, essentially. And so, what is that? I mean, it's well understood that intelligence is the capacity to make connections. That's what it is. Intelligence in any human being or animal or ecosystem or social system is the ability for that system or being to make connections that are relevant for them. And so if every meal we're eating is basically an exercise, a practice, a discipline, really, unfortunately, of not making connections, don't make things. It just, our whole intelligence, individual intelligence and our social intelligence, unfortunately, gets just reduced, massively reduced. And it explains a lot how we can actually tolerate and go along with a culture where we use our resources, our money, and our brains and everything to do what? To cut down the rainforest at an acre per second, to overfish the oceans, to create weapons that will blow up everybody up, to allow corporations to evade into our lives with advertising that targets our children with violence and pornography, to turn them into consumers of junk that's just going to make them sick. I mean, how do we explain it? It's very obvious. When we're eating animal-based foods, it's basically shutting down our intelligence because we're being exploited, essentially. The cows are eating fish not because the farmer thinks, oh, fish is good, make them healthy. No, it's because it's gonna make them more money. If we're eating animal foods, if I'm eating fish or chicken or beef or cheese or eggs, I'm being exploited. It's gonna make them a lot more money. It is. That's why it is. That's why we're doing it. And so to understand that when we exploit others and we're exploiting the animals and ecosystems by eating animal foods, we're also being exploited, and that it all rides on this underlying mentality that's injected into us without our permission of disconnectedness, of shutting down our intelligence so that we'll be cogs in a machine that's running along that is making a wealthy elite very wealthy. So that's one. Another one, mentality, the second one, I'll just do three. The second one is, I guess you could sum it up in the words of reductionism and commodification. Basically, every meal is a ritual, and anthropologists understand this, actually. It's very interesting. Anthropologists understand that every society in the world, essentially, transmits values from generation to generation through rituals. And the main ritual in any society are the meals of that society. So looking deeply into our culture's meals is an adventure not only of understanding our society, but understanding ourselves, because we're all products of our society. So that's why when we're sitting at the table from the time we're little infants all the way up until we're 80 years old, we're participating in rituals that are not only causing us to ritually disconnect and to practice disconnecting, but also to practice looking with eyes that when we see beings, we just see things, objects, commodities that we buy and sell, whose value is determined by how much they weigh. Can you imagine? I mean, would you like to be looked at by a superior, more powerful species, I should say, not superior, but a more powerful species who sees your value in how much you weigh? You say, well, wait a minute. I mean, I can play the guitar. Doesn't that count for something? Or I'm a good cook. I have a few good jokes. I mean, don't I get anything for that? No, it's how much you weigh is what matters. I mean, this is incredible that we human beings actually go along with this. That we reduce beings to their weight. That's their value. And I mean, how can we do this? How can we do it? And yet every meal is teaching us to just see eyes. That when we see a cow, we just see beef, how much they weigh is what they're worth. We don't look into their eyes, we don't connect with them, we don't see a being worthy of respect. Veganism is nothing to be proud of. It's not being any better than anyone. It's simply returning to our own home, our own heart, our own natural wisdom, and when we see a being, we see a being. It's no big deal when we see a being, to see a being, and then we naturally respect them. So if we're not doing that, we've been seriously wounded. And the other thing that we have to emphasize too is that the third one is the domination of the sacred feminine. And this is very important. I have a whole chapter actually that goes into this more in depth, especially in regard to dairy products and eggs, but just in general, all animal agriculture. Animal agriculture is not merely human beings dominating, exploiting, and abusing animals. More accurately, it's actually men dominating and abusing female animals, and it's primarily sexual abuse. I mean, there's two main things in animal agriculture. You're killing them and you're sexually abusing them. And you cannot have animal agriculture without massive quantities of sexual abuse. It's billions of times every day we are impregnating animals against their will and stealing their babies. All these animals are going through this. That's what it is. That's how it works. And so I think we all know in our bones, I talk about this actually in the World Peace Diet as the goddess, the ancient Greek goddess Sophia. Sophia was the ancient Greek goddess of wisdom, and I think she probably represents an inner capacity that we all have to love and nurture and protect life. And I think we see it most obviously in women who have a beautiful natural capacity to love and protect life, especially their little baby. Their baby is born. They go through all this, difficulty through the birth, and then the baby is born. And then the mother is just loving and protecting that little baby and nurturing that little baby. And that is critical. That mother-child bond is really the foundation of a healthy little child, and also the healthy foundation of a healthy family, the healthy society, a healthy world. If that's broken, we as little kids will get very abused, and psychologically we won't have a good foundation, and our entire society will unravel into violence. But what are we doing to build, millions of animals every day, cows, pigs, chickens, fishes, all these animals that are used in animal agriculture, they're all horribly sexually abused in the sense that they're impregnated against their will, and what the industry refers to as rape racks. After they give birth, say for example cows, after they give birth to a little calf, after 9 months, they have the same gestation period we do, and the pain and the birth process for them is like for us. It's painful, it's difficult. They give birth to this little calf. Now they want to love and nurse that little calf. What do? We say, that's not your calf, that's my calf. I own you, I own the calf. We steal the calf, we kill the calf immediately, and then we impregnate her again on the rape rack, and now she's lactating, so now she's giving milk, and we're stealing the milk. And so now she's being pushed to give, instead of 25 pounds of milk a day, she's being pushed to give 100 pounds of milk a day. And she's also growing another calf inside of her. I mean, cows would naturally live 25 years on any dairy, organic or not. When they reach 5 years old, they're sent off, they're hung upside down by one leg, their throats are slashed and they're killed. And so it's a rape and kill operation that is absolutely causing horrific suffering to the mothers and the babies. We have lived in an RV for 17 years, traveling around North America, witnessing everywhere massive monocrop fields of corn and soy and alfalfa, just the absolute destruction of ecosystems, all this pesticide, herbicide, fungicide residue, killing bees and birds and fishes, and to feed these animals you don't see. And then at night, if we're near a dairy, sometimes we were, I hear the dairy cows literally bellowing and bawling and sounding like screaming sometimes all night because their babies had been stolen so we can have their milk. And we call all this, what do we call it? And we feed it to our children. We don't only cause that suffering, but we eat it. We eat it. We use these foods as building blocks of our temple, our body temple. And I think we all know that our physical body is a temple, right? I mean, in the sense that it's precious. Our physical body is our vehicle to live our life. You would think we want to build a life of joy, creativity, and love, and kindness, and caring, and celebration. So we would use the bricks to build this temple that are bricks of joy and love and freedom and celebration. And yet what do? We're taught, we're all raised in society where we're forced to use bricks of misery and violence and torture and despair and ugliness and violence to build this temple. When are we going to wake up and realize what we're doing and actually talk about it and see that we have a beautiful future beckoning? This earth is so beautiful and abundant. The animals are waiting for us to wake up. Future generations, if we're going to have any, are waiting for us to wake up. And we can wake up. And that's the greatest gift we can give to the world, is to make an effort to understand what the consequences of what I'm saying of animal agriculture, and then to bring our lives into harmony, into alignment with this understanding, and then, if we can, in some way to share these ideas with other people in ways that people can hear it. It's not about blaming people, saying you're wrong, you shouldn't do this. We're all just following orders. We're all born into a society where we're forced into this. People don't get up in the morning thinking, well, I want to harm animals. I want to make sure some poor animal gets raped and killed. We never think that. We just think, I got to get to the office. I got to grab a hamburger. We don't think about the consequences of our actions. We're taught not to do that. And so the whole idea is, to me, really, it's about Sophia, which is the sacred feminine, is resurrecting in our consciousness. This capacity we have to love and to care and to see and to be aware and to be mindful and conscious is resurrecting in humanity. It has to. And it is. We see it happening. I feel very fortunate that Madeline and I both are able to travel on all the continents and just be with people like you. And there's so many. It's this movement, this vegan movement, or this movement of world peace through food and through choices that we make in the daily life is growing. It's pretty much invisible in the mass media because they don't want anybody to know it's happening in many ways. But vegan, food is one of the fastest growth industries. Organic food is one of the fastest growth industries. And it's a beautiful thing. I love, Madeline, my wonderful wife from Switzerland, is the artist of these paintings here. The hen and the sheep and the pig. And these are actually animals that we've met in sanctuaries. The pig Fiona was going to be barbecued in a backyard barbecue, and she somehow jumped over a fence and ran away and ended up at a sanctuary in upstate New York called Farm Sanctuary, and we met her, and Madeline painted her for someone, and now, and the sheep also we saw at a sanctuary, and all these animals. There's so many animals. When you go to a sanctuary and see animals, food animals or farmed animals, and get to look in their eyes and see them, it's very revealing. We see that and hear the stories about them. Each one has a story. How many of you at some point in your life have had a companion animal of some kind, like a dog or a cat? Yeah, some of you have. So you know that these animals, when you look into their eyes, there's someone there, right? They're not just a thing, and they wouldn't like it if you step on their tail. They say, "Ow, get off my tail!" They don't want to be harmed. They don't want to be locked in the closet and starved or whatever. So these are the same. Fishes even. Fishes are well understood to have fully developed central nervous systems as fully developed as ours are, and intelligence at the level, actually, they say now, of non-human primates. I mean, they have very complex social relationships, long-term memories, and so forth. So these are all highly sentient, conscious, aware beings that we are abusing. And the idea that they're inferior to us is just a form. It's like people when they own, like in South Carolina, they say, well, they're just black people. It doesn't matter. You do whatever you want because we're superior, they're inferior. And we look back and we say, that was a dark time of ridiculous. It's not. It's the same. I mean, these beings, and it's, in some ways, this is much greater, more suffering. But the good news, again, is that there is an awakening happening. And when we begin to awaken our hearts to the beauty of animals, the beauty of nature, the beauty of our own consciousness, we can begin to heal this. And I'm so delighted that it's happening. And I think all of us, I want to congratulate all of you, because I know if you found your way through the door and you're in this room right now, you're already on the path of questioning on some level the official stories, like the official protein story, the official calcium story, the official human superiority story, and all these other stories that are devastating to not only to animals but to us. And you're in some way helping to build a new world where peace and freedom and justice are possible. So I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. I feel so much love, actually, for you and for your willingness to bring this message, because it's exactly the message that no one wants to hear. It's like Carl Jung said, the shadow archetype, the shadow, it's essentially psychologically, it's what we are, but what we say, no, I'm not that. And the interesting thing about the shadow archetype is that the bigger it is, the harder it is to see. And so animal agriculture, it's so huge. I mean, the violence and the devastation environmentally and every other way is so gigantic, and yet we just don't want to see it. We say, oh, we're good people, we're kind, we're loving, we're very generous. We like having a good barbecue, we like having some nice cheeseburgers, and we're good, loving people. But there are other people. So what the shadow archetype does is it represses our awareness, so we just don't see what we're doing. And then the second thing is we then project it. Everything we're repressing, we project on someone else. But there's these other evil people, they're violent, and we have to build a lot of weapons, and we have to make sure that we can attack them. So the whole idea is to shine the light of awareness into ourselves and to change ourselves. As Gandhi said, there can never be any positive social change without positive personal change. I can't change anybody. I cannot change you, anybody, you or you or you. I can only change one person in the world, this one. You know, each one of us can do that. We can change ourselves. We can bring ourselves more into alignment with this inner wisdom, and then we can contribute to making communities where we can work together with others cooperatively to help transform our society. But the main focus has to be with ourselves, I think. And then also how we can effectively share these ideas. So I'll say just a couple of words about community and then maybe play a short piece of music and then open it up for questions. Does that sound good? Is everybody still hanging in there, more or less? Thank you very much. All right. So, yeah, just very briefly about the community. I just want to say that myself, for example, I was born in a typical family eating the usual meals of lots of meat, dairy products, and eggs, and I did not question it. I had no tiny little ray of light coming anywhere that there was any other possible way of eating than lots of meat, dairy products, and eggs. And I remember when I was about 7 years old, I asked my mother, I said, "Mom, the food we're eating, is this what everybody eats?" And she said, "Everybody in the whole world?" I said, "Yeah, everybody in the whole world. You know, they eat like we eat." And she said, "Yeah, basically, yeah, this is pretty much normal human food." And I said, "All right, I was just wondering, thanks." And then she left, and then she came back a few minutes later, and she said, "You know, actually, I'm sorry, that's not completely true. There are some people who are vegetarians." I went, "What? What's that big word? Vegetarian?" And then she said, "But don't worry, you'll never meet one." And she said, "I'm a lot older than you are. I never met one." And then she said, "I don't know where they get their protein." And so I thought, oh, these vegetarians, they must be people that either live on another planet where they don't need protein, or maybe they're the poor people that are dragging themselves through the dirt. They have no energy. They just don't get enough protein, you know, that kind of thing. So that's what I thought about vegetarians. They're just sort of hypothetical people or whatever. And my mother actually was completely right. I never heard the word again. That was the end of it. But I remember when I was about 13 years old, I went away to the summer camp in Vermont that was affiliated with this beautiful little organic farm, a dairy farm. And, you know, one of those little places where they, you know, all the pictures, like old McDonald's farm where nothing bad ever happens. It's all good, you know. But I remember being taught to catch a chicken, put her down on the ground on this board with 2 nails in it, put her neck through the nails, hold her down with my left hand, cut off her head with my right hand, axe, you know, and put her through the scalding tank and eat the chickens. And really, for me, as a 13-year-old kid, I had no problem doing that. I mean, I was hard, tough, you know, I could do it, no problem. I didn't like it, but I knew at that point I'd gone through 13 years of the most intense indoctrination a human being can possibly go through, and I knew, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that God gave us those animals to eat. They do not have a soul. They are so inferior to us that it really doesn't matter. And if you don't eat them, if you don't do that, you'll definitely die within 24 hours of a protein deficiency. You know, so I knew this was the right thing to do. And even I remember very clearly still to this day how a couple of weeks later, we gathered around a dairy cow in the barn. She was only about 4 or 5 years old, and she wasn't old, but you know, the dairy operator, this guy that we admired tremendously, said, "Well, she's not giving enough milk anymore, so we're going to have to use it for meat," you know. Like, that's what we do here, you know. And I thought, and I looked at this cow, and she was not happy. And I won't go into it, but basically we put a gun to her head and pulled the trigger, and it was a huge mess. I mean, blood and urine and feces and just, you know, it was so shocking to me. But I never questioned that what we were doing was the right thing. I knew this is how it is. God gave us these animals. That's what they're here for. Luckily, after I went away to college, and it was during the early 70s, during the Vietnam War era, and I started questioning everything, but I still never met a vegetarian. But then in 1975, I left home after college with my brother. We thought we would walk from Concord, Massachusetts, where we were living, all the way to California and meditate the whole way. So we were walking along, meditating, and we did this for many months, actually, and it was kind of a whole miraculous story. But we ended up, after a few months, we walked all the way to Tennessee. And we were in Tennessee, and we went for a while to a community called The Farm. And The Farm in 1975, south of Nashville, was the largest hippie commune in the world. There was about 900 people living there, mostly from California. And they were all vegetarians, they said. We're vegetarians. And actually, today we would say they were vegans because they didn't eat any meat, but they also didn't eat any fish. They also didn't eat any dairy products or eggs. So no one heard of the word vegan in 1975, so you couldn't use that word. It was like an unknown word. But they said, we're vegetarians. And I looked at these people, and not one of them was dying of a protein deficiency that I could see, right? They were thriving. They were doing great. And they had about 200 children. Most of them were vegan from birth, and they were all thriving also. And so I thought, this is wonderful, because I was already really questioning eating meat. I was meditating every day, and I didn't like, we went fishing. I remember killing fish. I thought, God, there's got to be a better way than this. And I said to the guy I was talking to, I said, so why are you guys vegetarians? And he said, well, there's two main reasons. One is that most of the food we're growing, instead of feeding it to hungry people, we're feeding it to animals, and that's causing food shortages. And so, hungry people cause war. We want to create a world of peace, so we're eating lower in the food chain so there's enough food for everyone to eat. And I said, wow, that's so wonderful. I wish I would have thought of that myself. That's great. So you're doing it to make more peace in the world, so there's enough food for everyone, so we don't have hunger anymore. He said, yeah, that's right. And also, he said, there's another reason. And the other reason is, he said, do you know what these animals go through that people are eating? And I suddenly thought, oh no, don't tell me. Just don't say it. I don't want to hear about it. And he said, well, all right, I won't say much. But he told me just a couple of things, and it was just enough to kind of help me pull back the curtain in my mind. He just said a little bit about how the animals that we're eating are confined in these horrible cages where they're typically, very often, they're so confined that after a while they're just banging their heads against the bars, just driven literally into insanity, because they can't move, just banging their heads, and how they're mutilated, their beaks are chopped off, their tails are chopped off, their ears are notched, their teeth are clipped, and they're castrated without anesthesia, all this stuff without anesthesia, and then impregnated, and all this. And so for me, I suddenly had this moment of kind of like a revelation where, kind of like Toto pulling the curtain back, he pulled the curtain back, and I suddenly saw this ocean of bloodshed and violence behind the veneer of our society. We have the evening news, and we talk about very rationally about the war here, and there's this problem there, and up. We never talk about that. We don't talk about that. We just very studiously avoid the biggest thing we're doing, the largest activity that humans actually engage in, a mass slaughter of 75 million animals every day, a really conservative estimate, and it's billions every day, actually, in the United States alone, if you include all the aquatic animals. This mass slaughter of animals, so that was it. Actually, that was it for me, because it was so wonderful, because I suddenly saw it, I realized it, and at the same time, I was in a community where every day we were eating meals together of beans and grains and vegetables, right? We were eating a lot of soy. That was back in the day where soy is king. We made the first soy ice cream ever in North America. I remember we'd cook these soybeans, we'd squeeze it in cheesecloth, we'd take the milk, we'd mix it up and freeze it and it was called Ice Bean. It was the very first vegan ice cream ever. And it was horrible, but we thought, that's not too bad. It's vegan, vegetarian ice cream. But anyway, so I was in at the very ground floor of all this back then, and I remember when I heard this from this guy, though, that was it. I've never in my life since that day in 1975 eaten animal foods. I shouldn't say that. Eaten meat, actually. I've never eaten meat in my life since then. And I found out years later when I met Tuttle in Switzerland, the same month and year, this young Swiss artist in Switzerland also said, I'm never going to eat meat again either, in my life either. And also, as I said earlier, in the last 40 years since then, I've never been to a doctor once and never been to a drugstore to get a pill. It's just, to me, it's such a liberation to move to a plant-based diet, not just for the animals, but for us. We're not designed to be sick and all this stuff. We're designed to thrive and be healthy and celebrate our lives here. And so a few years later, in 1980, so that's about 36 years ago, I went vegan. I figured out the dairy and egg thing. And then a few years after that, I was living in these meditation centers in California at that point, and I decided to shave my head, become a Zen Buddhist monk, live in Korea. So there I was in this Zen monastery in Korea, and I realized for the second time in my life, I was in a community that was vegan. Again, they didn't talk about it being vegan. We didn't talk about anything. It was a silent retreat the whole time. But basically, it was a community that had been practicing what we would call veganism, not just for a few years, but for like 700 or 800 years, since the 1200s. Right? These people, since it started, there was no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, silk, leather, fur, nothing that comes from harming animals. Even mosquitoes you would not just kill. You'd kind of try to take them outside. The whole idea was to practice kindness and respect for other beings. that if you have a life of meditation, a life of contemplation, a life of introspection, a life of spiritual aspiration, then that means pay attention to how we're living and not cause needless suffering. As I said earlier, the ancient Sanskrit word ahimsa is really the root teaching in all the world religions. It means nonviolence and not to harm others. And that if we're really serious about spiritual growth, if we're serious about creating a society of peace and justice ourselves, a more harmonious society, then this is the foundation. Our food is our most intimate connection with nature and our society, and it has to be of peace and kindness, and it can be. There's nothing stopping us. That's the beauty. There's no necessity for animal foods. It's possible. So that was it. When I came back to this culture, eventually, I felt like I had these roots of veganism that went much deeper, because I'd had the opportunity, in a way, to do so much meditation. I'd already done a lot at that point, a lot of long retreats, but through meditation, we can get perhaps glimpses, into the true nature of our mind, and realize that our mind is not what we think it is. We think our mind is sort of driving us along with all these thoughts, propelling us along. My old Zen teacher said it's kind of like having a popcorn popping machine. You can't figure out how to pull the plug on it. It's just constantly thinking and doing. But I realized at one point that the actual true nature of the mind is like the sky. It's vast. It's completely unimpeded. It's radiant and luminous and self-existing and totally free. That's our true nature, actually. And yet I realized I had been born into a culture where, from the time I was born, basically, it was like my mind had been colonized by this invading force, just invaded with this whole program of competition and violence and abuse to fit into a system. And it was like all these clouds covered the sky completely, and just drove me along to want to do this and want to do that and try to change them and try to get whatever it is. This constant suffering and constant conflict. Not constant, but basically pretty much constant, actually, if you really look carefully. So, but I realized that actually that's not the truth, that we are. All of us, are essentially free at the deep level and of the nature of loving kindness and compassion and joy. And once we understand that we've been wounded by this cultural program, and each one of us can heal it. Each one of us can work on ourselves to bring kindness and love into our lives for other people, for animals, for ourselves, and we can begin to heal our world. And that's, I think, Sophia, the sacred feminine rising up within us, the wisdom that sees the interconnectedness of all life, that we're all in this together. So that's the basic idea. And I think I just want to say, as far as our physical health, I have a whole chapter in the World Peace Day that goes more in depth into the basic teaching, because everybody's saying, okay, well, but aren't we designed to eat meat? And so the basic idea is, no, we're not designed to eat meat. If we really look at our physical body, our dentition and everything about our physical body, actually, it's not designed to eat meat. It's really designed to eat plant-based foods. We're definitely not designed to eat dairy products. We don't have renin like little calves have to break down casein, which is the main protein in milk. So that does a lot of damage. So the basic idea from that point of view is that all of us have been given this wonderful gift of a physical body that does not require any animal to suffer to get all the nutrients that we need to thrive and be healthy and celebrate our lives here. But also, all of us have been born into a society where, from the time we're little infants, we've been compelled to participate in these mealtime rituals where we essentially shut down that awareness that we have of this gift, and we're taught to just basically stab and kill animals and eat their flesh and secretions anyway, and cause enormous suffering to them. And we don't realize that when we plant radishes, radish seeds, we're going to get radishes. We're not going to get carrots. So if we're planting all these seeds over and over again of violence and abuse and misery and devastation and disease, and millions of times, and we do it ourselves over and over again when we buy animal foods and then we eat that we're sowing those seeds within ourselves. And it's completely unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. We can all thrive on plant-based meals. And when we understand that more clearly, we can begin to have confidence. I think our natural self-confidence, our natural self-respect begins to return, and we begin to feel a sense of joy and harmony and peace as the foundation of our being. And I think that's the foundation for the movement of veganism. It's not about criticizing people or trying to tear anything down. It's about actually creating alternatives that are based on sanity and love and kindness and living those ourselves. So bless you all. Thank you so much for joining us here. I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and just maybe play a short piece of music on this piano, and then I'd like to kind of open it up for questions. Feel free if you want to look at one of the paintings or just turn your attention within. This is a piece of music. We have quite a few. I think we have about 8 or 9 CDs out of original piano music, and one with piano and flute. Madeline plays the flute. And this is a piece called Dance for the Arctic Moon. And the north of the 4 directions is usually the direction of going within, and the moon typically symbolizes spiritual awakening. So this is Dance for the Arctic Moon. I'd like to dedicate it to the healing of all of our relations and invite you as you're listening to send our blessings to our world. Enjoy. Uh-oh. Somebody help me with this, the piano. Who's the piano person? It was working before.
To sustain.
It's not working.
Oh, it's not.
Not working.
Wow.
It worked before. All right, so if we can get that working, I'll play the piano, but I can't play it right now. It's not working. All right, so I guess what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Madeline right now. And so think of any questions you may have you'd like to ask me. Madeline and I are traveling, and so she has just a few words. Thank you.
Yes, hi. I have here some containers to take a donation since we don't ask for any fee and traveling is expensive. And so it's really free will. Just ask your heart what you would like to give. And if you're inclined to give something, just put it in here. I pass, for each side, I pass one of the containers. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Madeline. Okay, bless you all. So yeah, I think we have time for one or two questions. I know we have to be out at a certain point here in about. So okay, yes, go ahead, yes, sir. I'll let you use the microphone. Yes.
I've been a vegan or vegetarian for almost 50 years, so I'm dedicated. But I meet people who say, "Oh, I was a vegetarian. I tried it. It was pretty good, but then I got kind of weak, and I'm getting more strict by eating meat again."
Okay.
What do you say to that?
Okay, so the question is, even though you've been a vegan for quite a while, very successful, you meet sometimes people who say they tried doing it and they felt weaker, is that right, on that, or something they didn't like and it didn't go so well, so they started eating meat again. That's a very good question. It's a big question. Why is it that some people say they don't do that well? In the World Peace Diet, I address this question, and it takes quite a long time to go into it fully, but just briefly, I think the most important thing in these kind of situations is to, as vegans, if someone comes up to us with this question, is to be a good listener and try to see, so what was it exactly you were eating? Maybe talk a little bit about that. But the basic idea in all of this is that plant-based foods provide us objectively with everything we need to be healthy and to thrive. In terms of protein, and in terms of carbohydrates and fiber and all those things. Sometimes when people go to a plant-based diet, this does happen, people don't do it very well, right? They move to a plant, first of all, if people go vegetarian and they're not vegan, then already, dairy in some ways is much worse than meat in terms of, harming us physically. It clogs up our body, it causes all kinds of autoimmune problems, it causes anemia. There's no iron in dairy products, so a lot of people get anemic if they're vegetarians. So vegetarians are typically not very healthy. or very easy not to be healthy. Vegans, it's also possible to be not very healthy as a vegan, although I think you have to work at it. If we're eating, I didn't mention it earlier, but I think it's very important when we move to a plant-based diet that it also be organic as much as possible, also unprocessed as much as possible, and a whole foods, organic, plant-based diet with plenty of starch. I think starch is important, like potatoes, sweet potatoes, grains, legumes, starchy vegetables, pumpkins, and so forth, because that's really, those break down into the glucose and really give us the energy that we need. Plants are also the source of all the protein that we need. It's much better, higher quality protein. Plant protein is much higher quality, much easier for our bodies to assimilate, doesn't cause the acid and the inflammation that animal-based protein causes. All the fatty acids, of course, that we need. But some people, when they go so-called vegan, they think they're not getting enough protein, so they're eating huge amounts maybe of peanut butter or who knows what. I've seen this quite a bit. They're not eating it. They're afraid to eat grains. They're afraid or to eat starch. And so a lot of people just don't do it properly. That's one problem. Another problem is that when people move to a plant-based diet, and if they do it well, we have to remember that fruits and vegetables are natural blood purifiers and detoxifiers. So people very often will go into a detoxification, and so they start cleaning out, and because they're cleaning out, they feel worse for a while. And so then they go to a healthcare practitioner, a doctor or somebody, and the doctor says, oh, you're a vegan, oh no, that's the worst thing, you're not getting enough protein, you're probably not getting enough B12, what's going to happen? And they say, you better eat a little meat. And then they say, oh no, I don't want to eat meat, I'm going vegetarian, I'm going vegan. And they say, well, if you eat a little meat, you'll feel better. And so we very often trust these people. And then also there's the placebo, so the cleansing stops and we feel better, that's one thing. The other thing is that then these foods become placebos. Placebo is very powerful, and that's a whole other thing, but it's well understood that placebos, the more bitter or expensive or disgusting they are, the better they work. And so when someone goes vegan or vegetarian and they don't want to eat meat anymore, and then they start doing it, and it's kind of like, oh, I don't want to eat any chicken again, but then I guess my doctor said I better, so I guess I will, and then they eat a little chicken, but it's very disgusting. That makes a very powerful placebo, and they go, oh, I feel so great now. So there's many, and then the other thing is subconsciously going vegan, especially, and even vegetarian, is very often causes a lot of problems to people. The difficulty with going vegan is not going vegan, I don't think. It's other people. Very often our relationships is difficult. Maybe our friends don't like it that we're vegan, or our partner doesn't like it that we're vegan, or coworkers don't like it, or whatever it is, or it's more awkward, it's more difficult socially. And so deep down we would rather just be part of the tribe and just eat what everybody's eating. And so it's so great when we think, well, I tried and it didn't work, and so now, I guess I'm just one of those people that can't do it. So it's very important, I think, to understand that when we go vegan, as we do that physically and actually move to a plant-based way of eating, we also have to change our underlying attitudes. And actually, that's why I think reading the World Peace Diet and really understanding the bigger picture of our society and understanding the health benefits and really making an effort to understand how to eat healthy plant-based meals. Don't just eat donuts and Coca-Cola and think you're going to be a healthy vegan. We have to really eat healthy foods. And so all those kinds of things. So I think when someone asks you that question, the best thing to do is to really listen to them, talk to them, share your ideas, but most importantly, share your own experience. That's the key. When we share our own experience and say, gosh, and I think the one sentence that's really the key sentence is, I'm so glad that I realized that the only reason I was eating animal foods all those years is because I was just following orders. And I realized those orders are not in my best interests in terms of my health, but also in terms of others. And now that I'm not doing it anymore, I feel great. So what we're trying to do, we're not trying to change other people. We're simply planting seeds of our own experience, telling our own story. So it's important, I think, when we're talking to people to not tell them that they're wrong and they didn't do it right, but just say, plant our own story and how glad we are and how great it is working for us. And as we do that in a loving and respectful way, they can question that again. And I think one of the most important things to do, and why I'm really glad we have a gathering like this, is that there's a lot of people who are moving, are interested, say, for example, in veganism, in moving to a plant-based way of eating, a world peace way of eating, but we don't mentor them properly. We don't have coaches or mentors or people that just help them to make that transition. Because it's important to remember there's three main stages in this journey. Veganism is a journey. It's an adventure. It's not like we go vegan and then we're done. We're perfect now. Leave me alone. I'm vegan. I'm perfect. It's a journey. So the first stage is the beginner vegan stage, and the beginner vegan stage is very difficult. It's a hard thing. There's so much to learn. How to make meals that are healthy, where we thrive and have energy. We have to figure all that out, and that's delicious, that we like. And then also we have to figure out how to respond to people. How do we respond to our doctor when our doctor says, you're not getting enough protein? We have to educate our doctor. We have to educate other people. Everybody becomes a health expert. We have to know, what do we say to people when they say, well, if you're going vegan is stupid, because if everybody went vegan, cows would take over the world. So we have to figure out that. So the beginning stage is difficult, and it's easy for people to fall back. The pressure is relentless very often against people being vegan. Social pressure, internal thoughts. Since I was a little kid, I always thought I have to eat meat to get enough protein. We have to question. I have to eat dairy to get enough calcium. We have to question those inner programs. If we don't do it, we're going to go back. We're going to find a reason why it doesn't work for us. We'll convince ourselves it's not working. And it's so much easier if it doesn't work. Then we can go along, right? The average person walks down a typical street, there's Dairy Queen and Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's, and they go, oh, what a great place to live. I get Dairy Queen, I get Kentucky Fried Chicken, I get McDonald's. Life is good, all my friends eat there, everything's great. The average vegan walks down the same street, and it's like, oh no, I'm in this terrible world of dairy, Kentucky Fried Killing and Murder King and death in the junk in the box and all this. So, and if we don't mature to the level in our veganism, when someone comes up to us and they say, oh, I hear you're a vegan, and we say, oh yeah, I'm a vegan, but it's really pretty terrible. I mean, all these people nobody knows what to eat, and there's all this lousy food and all this suffering, and it's a lot to carry, and people say, wow, I'm so glad I'm not a vegan. We have a tendency sometimes, I think, to not understand as vegans that it's really important for us to get beyond the first stage. The second stage, that's kind of what I'm talking about, which is sort of the angry vegan stage, or the frustrated vegan stage, or the depressed vegan stage, where it just seems sort of overwhelming. We have to understand that people are doing the best they can. They've been programmed, and we've been able to free ourselves from that prison, and share how wonderful it is that we've been able to do that. And so then we get to the third stage, which is I refer to as the deep vegan stage, where it really gets fantastic, because now we understand the bigger picture. Now we understand how to make meals that are healthy. Now we can really progress intellectually and emotionally and psychologically. We can help build a world of kindness and compassion and work together to do that. So it means we have to really hone our skills of effective communication, really learn to listen to people and be kind and loving to them always. And veganism is about love. It's love and kindness, always, no matter what. Not only to animals, but to humans, human animals. We're all animals, right? I mean, mammals. And so to be kind and loving to other people, not to talk down to them, to realize we're on the same side. Not like I'm the vegan, I'm right, you're not a vegan, you're wrong. You don't know what you're doing, you did it wrong. Today we're on the same side. We've all been wounded, and you're having some difficulty with the transition. Maybe I can help, and talk about your own experience, and support them. And I think as vegans, it's hard for us to do that because we're such a small minority. But it's really important, I think, for us to deepen our sense of loving kindness and respect for people, and share as best we can in a loving way how we can help them if they're interested, but not try to change them. Because as soon as someone feels like I'm trying to change them, they're going to resist. So the idea is to plant the seed and then let go. Don't be attached to the fruit of our actions, and do the best we can in our interactions with other people. So thank you very much. That's one of the really good questions. Yes, Tom.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to, for the sake of time, let you know the panel's fixed.
Oh, okay.
For the set of files, and we got it working right. The other thing is, can you explain more of what's happening in Princeville? Is this going to be the same talk, as well as can you explain more about your idea for dining out? Because you mentioned something about it's more for activism and people that want to get into that. So, if we don't have a lot more time, maybe you could focus on that.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, as Tom just said, we're running out of time to do too much more of the Q&A. But basically, in Princeville, the talk, it's never the same. Madeline, bless her heart, she's been traveling with me now for 25 years doing talks, and she says, gosh, it's never the same. So if she says, but it'll be similar. I'll be talking about the World Peace Diet, some of the main ideas, however it comes out. So if you have friends who you think might benefit from being there, then please, by all means, do spread the word. If you'd like to come again, that would be great. And then also, that'll be Wednesday night, and then Friday night, we're thinking, we have this idea of having a dine out where we get together, probably a smaller group, but whoever wants to do it is totally welcome. And that would just be, I wouldn't give a talk, I would just be, it would be more time for this, for Q&A. And with the focus being mainly on two primary things. One is how to thrive as vegans in a not yet vegan world. And number two, how to be more effective as advocates for veganism. So I've talked a little bit about that here this evening, but to be able to go into that more deeply. And also if you have any questions you'd just like to have discussed or contemplated, then that would be great too. So if anyone's interested, I don't know, you were thinking we should maybe have a show of hands, maybe? Okay, let's have a show of hands, because we have people who can make the food, we just don't know who apparently, where it might be the best place to have it. So how many people might be interested in that? Let's just see how many we might be interested. So do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So maybe 16, 18 people, it looks like. Okay, so what we'll do then, I guess, Tom, what did you decide? So what we'll do is we'll find a place and we'll put it up. We'll send out an email. You have everybody's email address, I think, or most people. And I'll also put it on World Peace Diet, worldpeacediet.com. Just click on upcoming events. We'll put it right there, the address and time, and Tom's phone number and email address. So if you want to have any questions, you can contact Tom. And we'll do it that way, I think. That'd be good.
Okay. Thank you,
Will. All right, I'll play a short, apparently the piano's working, so I'll play a short piece of music, Dance for the Arctic Moon. Here we go. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's, again, really a real honor to be with you, and I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening, and thank everyone who helped make this event possible. I know it's getting close to Christmas, and I know that makes it more difficult in our busy schedules to come together like this. I'll just close perhaps with a short poem by the American poet Shel Silverstein, who wrote a poem that's kind of related to this time of year called Point of View. And I think it kind of makes a few good points. So it goes like this. Thanksgiving dinners sad and thankless, Christmas dinners dark and blue, when you stop and try to see it from a turkey's point of view. Sunday dinner isn't sunny, Easter feasts are just bad luck, when you stop and try to see it as a chicken or a duck. Oh, how I once loved tuna salad, steak and lobster, lamb chops too, till I stopped and looked at dinner from the dinner's point of view. And so I think, he's pointing to that beautiful idea that, we can stop. Each one of us are kind of propelled along, especially, this time of year with so much to do. But if we can stop for a moment, look from another perspective, contemplate, connect, reconnect with our own inner wisdom, we can begin, I think, again, the healing process, deepen the healing process, and help contribute to a world where our children and the children of all living beings will be able to celebrate their lives. There's really nothing stopping us except our own inertia. If we can, as we understand this and do the best we can to spread this message by embodying the message. I think that's really the key, to embody this message within ourselves. And if you do come to Princeville, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that embodying part, but also on Friday as well. So if anyone's interested, we'll be back there, Madeline and I. If anyone's interested in seeing her other paintings, she's got quite a few available back there. And then we have copies of we don't have any copies of the World Peace Diet, but I'm happy to take your name and we can send you one. And we do have copies of the other book, and we have CDs of music and some meditations also. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like to have me talk to you about, and anything like that. So looking forward. We do also have, if anyone's interested, if you've read the World Peace Diet and you want to go more deeply into all this, we have a World Peace Diet training program. We just did a training on the Big Island last weekend, and then a training in Maui this past weekend. And we also have an online training. So if you just kind of want to dive into this a little more, you can go online and find out more about that.
Well, thank you, Will.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.